What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Healthspan Academy. I'm your host, Craig Shearhart, and with me today is Mr. Matt Wenning, who is a huge figure in the world of strength and conditioning. He started his academic career with a Bachelor of Exercise Science and a Master's in Biomechanics at Ball State University. He's a three-time world champion powerlifter. He's directed over 6,000 troops in strength, conditioning, and wellness for the U.S. Army. He's also been an advisor for the NFL. He's an international speaker for the National Strength and Conditioning Association. And he's the head of Winning Strength, which is basically a platform of programming and services for coaching strength development. So today is all about how to get freakishly strong with Matt. Matt, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, not a problem.
Awesome. So I want to kick this off. I was reading your bio and I followed your content. It seems like football was a big focus for you. Talk a little bit about your athletics and how that kind of came into your life.
Yeah, well, a lot of people, I talk about it quite a bit, but still people don't know. When I was 6 years old, I was hit by a car, broke my legs. I was homeschooled for an entire year.
Wow.
Ass all the way up to my crotch.
Oh, man.
Shattered my pelvis, broke my right leg in 6 places and my left in 4.
Oh.
So with that being said, when I started to get back out of casts and be able to move again, running and even just normal gait walking was difficult. So,
right.
So I gravitated to swimming at first, and I was more of a sprinter. I was still a big kid no matter what. So I really gravitated towards the 50 and 100 freestyle because I could use a lot of upper body power.
Huh.
That helped develop my shoulders and my arms and my back.
Yeah.
And so about the time I was, I'd say 11, my uncle had come to live with us for a short time while he was looking for a different job.
Right.
And he had a sand-filled set of weights and he brought with him. And he was bench pressing. And I asked if I could jump in and bench with him. It's my older uncle. He's a cool,
for sure.
He's a cool, muscular uncle that always had, manual labor jobs and always had abs.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure. So he starts to take some weight off. And I said, no, I'll do the weight you're doing. Not knowing anything. And so
that's amazing.
He stopped arguing with me after about 30 seconds. He's like, well, fine. If you want to try it, you can try it.
Yeah.
And it was like 135 for 8 reps at like 11 years old. And wow. I was already a pretty good bencher because I was swimming so many laps.
That's wild. That's not where I thought that story was going. That's crazy.
I had a pretty decent upper body strength already.
Yeah.
So that started to get some wheels turning, not immediately, but in the next year. And so going into 6th grade, I knew the next year we were able to play full pads, full tackle, full.
Yeah.
And I knew my legs were behind because of the car accident.
Sure.
So I thought, being a fairly smart younger kid now looking back, well, maybe if I go to the gym and train my legs, they'll get better and then they'll be able to withstand the impact and the running.
Right.
So I go there. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm doing a lot of weird machines. I see a handful of guys squatting, but not very many. And after a couple of weeks of really going in there, I'd say probably pretty much every day, I was following like Arnold's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, and I had the book with me and I was looking through it. I didn't know the difference between strength or power or size and any of that.
Yeah.
I didn't know which muscles, but I was following something. And one of the lifters just so happened to be a world teenage champion back in the day.
Oh, wow.
His name is Smith, and he was a 500-pound bencher at 181 body weight.
Wow.
So
that's
this
wild.
dude, beastie strong.
Huh.
And I've never seen him in the gym, but I kind of stayed away because I didn't know him at all. And they were all in their early mid-30s, and I was just a kid,
Yeah.
And so he sees me in there every day, busting my ass, and he comes up to me and he's like, hey, you're pretty big for a high school kid. You ought to come and train with us. And I said, well, I'm in 6th grade. And he like, what? You couldn't believe it. I was like 3 years older than I was. And
that's crazy.
He's like, well, definitely come and train with us now. So I tell him about wanting to be a bodybuilder and wanting to have a lot of muscle and be a football player. And he's just laughing because he's like, dude, you're built to be a power lifter. Like you need to worry about lifting maximal weights, instead of looking good. So he kind of directs me towards that way. And the first meet I go to, which I just turned 13. So it was the first division that they had back then was the 13-14 division.
Right.
So benching 250 at 13 years old.
Wow.
Did it with full commands. It was a non-sanctioned meet, but it was still
that's incredible.
Impressive, right?
Sure.
And So that really started the fire under me to see what I could do, because the coaches, the guys like Timmy and the big bencher I was telling you, they were like, man, if you can hold on to this for 10 or 15 years and train really hard and not get hurt, you could be really good.
Yeah.
So my whole mindset was to be really good even at that age. I was really thinking about being the best I could be around 25 or 30. I never thought that I would be good faster because my legs were so beat up.
Right.
That it would take me time to be a good squatter and deadlifter just based on those facts.
Sure.
So my patience was never a problem. I really just loved to go in and train really hard. And so everything that I did goal-wise, as far as records and accomplishments, was all just icing on the cake. I mean, I just like to go in.
Yeah. That's unreal. I gotta say, man, just because you mentioned like swimming and that prepped you for bench press, having trained the varsity swimmers, I can just say that's definitely not the norm. People that have been swimming like their whole teenage years, they don't just jump and like all of a sudden crush the bench press. Obviously, you've got some genetic gifts there.
Yeah, I was too big to be a good swimmer. I was, at that time, I probably 5'8". I wasn't done growing yet, and I was already like 170 pounds.
Wow.
So I was a big kid.
That's wild.
That being said, you have to remember, a lot of the great benchers, I know this for a fact. I know Swim Hack. I can't remember what his full name is, but he was an amazing swimmer.
Really?
And all 700-pound bencher.
Huh.
So I think there is a relation with swimming and benching. Obviously, if you're Michael Phelps, you're not going to be a good bench presser.
Yeah, true enough.
If you're just a decent athlete trying to swim,
true.
The ability over to the bench press from a kid would be pretty high, because your work capacity in the shoulders and the arms you'd be used to swimming laps and laps and laps. So doing an hour out with weights would not be.
Yeah. Especially if you've got a good coach that knows what they're doing, for sure. It's going to end up being a good base.
Yeah. What the problem is with swimming, especially at the youth level, I wouldn't say the coaches know what they're doing.
Yeah. That's the thing.
I would say I was very lucky that swimming didn't damage me. I only swam on this club team in the summer.
Yeah.
I never really swam all year long, which was a huge savior for me.
Yeah.
And then the weights, like I said, caught me by the time I was in high school, and I stopped swimming about my freshman, sophomore year. I just was so much of a better lifter. It was no point.
Yeah. It's like, those two aren't necessarily synonymous too. As your body gets denser, you tend to sink a little more. That's wild. And I was surprised actually hearing that John Welborn was a pretty competitive swimmer in his day too. It's just, I guess there's more bodybuilders and powerlifters, I guess, that have that background.
I think if you're building that work capacity when you're a kid, you learn to get up early, learn to train your ass off.
Absolutely.
Deal with those. When you're older, it's not a big deal to train hard.
Yeah, so true. So I want to chat about how this kind of lended into coaching. At what point did you decide that was something you wanted to pursue?
Well, being from a small town, there wasn't a lot of options. So when I first started, I never intended to be a coach. I just wanted to learn more to get better myself.
Right.
About 1999, my mom is in charge of the local hospital surgical area. And she works with a lady that had a son that was probably, 5-7 years older than me. And he was an accountant wizard, and he ended up being an accountant for the Colts. And so I accidentally, just by chance, run into him in the hallway, and he knew who I was.
Oh, wow.
And, hey, what are you doing? I said, I'm up here visiting mom. And he's like, what are you going to do after high school? And I said, well, I don't really know. I mean, I'd like to do something with weights.
Yeah.
I see as maybe like personal trainers at the Y. I don't, there wasn't a lot about strength conditioning at the time or anything. He goes, well, shit, you ought to go over and talk to the head strength coach at the Colts and see how he got his job.
Yeah.
Which I was Toreen, which he was there from like 97 to 2013, the same team.
Oh, wow.
So he was a great strength coach.
Yeah.
And ended up getting me a job shadow with John Toreen. And John Toreen recognized me for me being on the news because the Indianapolis News had come down to train me lifting, and I had benched like 46 reps with 225.
Oh, wow.
So I had just smashed everybody combine at
That's
19.
Wild.
Like right around combine time. So they were, Anthony Calhoun was the newscaster and was like, well, how many times do you think you could bench 225? And I was like, I don't know, probably close to 50. So while he's me. I'm in the background, just boom, 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 just cranking 25. And so John Torian had already seen me on the news. So
yeah, fair enough.
Say to me than just some kid walking in that was just job shadowing.
Yeah.
So sat down, told me, hey, if you want this job, you're probably going to need to get a master's degree.
Right.
You're going to go to school, which kind of took the wind out of my sails a little because, I thought that I could just be big and strong and I could teach other people how to do that.
Yeah.
So that kind of sucked on one respect. But the other thing was he didn't know where I was from. He knew I was like semi-local. And I said, well, I'm up from Muncie. And he goes, oh, well, Ball State's there. And I'm thinking, yeah, Ball State, the college that I grew up around. What about it? It's not a big deal. And he goes, #1 exercise science program in the country right now.
Wow.
And I was like, no way. So I'm thinking back home, my hometown, which is like 60,000 people, has the college for what I want to go to school for. I mean, so it's game over.
Yeah, that's wild. Very cool.
So that's kind of how that started. And then I just got engulfed in school and, and then the first thing the best advice that it ever gave to me was John Torian told me, whoever the head strength coach is at Ball State, I want you to go down there and I want you to work as many hours and volunteer as much as you can.
Yeah.
He goes, those are your biggest connections that you can make at the school. And so I did. And Wade was a retired NFL football player. He had a ton of connections. Yeah. So my first internship was University of Texas. So I was already in the coaching circle just based on the fact that I went and applied myself. But you'd be surprised at how many college kids would be in school for, say, strength conditioning, and they don't even know who the head strength coach is at the local college.
Yeah, that's wild.
They're not going down there and assisting. Yeah. I mean, so they completely lost that particular connection, which if that's what they want to do for a job is probably the largest connection they're going to have locally.
Yeah, I feel like that's a downfall of a lot of university students. They just get head buried in the books and forget to make those contacts and stuff like that.
Don't realize there's going to be 5,000 people that year graduate with their degree. Besides that, because that's not really, that degree doesn't really put you at the top of the list anymore. Now it's the degree plus everything else you're doing.
Yeah, so true. So I want to talk to you a bit about the academics, because actually I finished with a biomechanics degree the same year in 2005 from University of Toronto. What was your thesis in?
I did it with different types of shoes and squat techniques.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Yeah. We didn't have time to publish it for me to graduate, and I didn't really give a shit. So, what we measured the kinematic data to see the shank angle change with an elevated
heel.
I was using 500-pound squatters, which for a study was pretty good.
Yeah,
their variance between each squat itself, let alone the shoe, was too much to really find out if that was a big adjustment. But what we noticed was I didn't have enough time to go deep into the actual data.
Right,
was a massive change in foot pressure. But I thought that I was going to see a change in shank.
Right,
but I saw foot pressure, but I didn't have enough time.
Right,
to put that in the paper as well.
Interesting. Yeah, we looked at different shoe types and gait analysis briefly when I was a laureate for a couple of years. So that's pretty cool.
Anyway. Yeah. So
I'm just curious about that. That's wild, man. So I got to ask you about the warm-ups. I think that's been something that's been highlighted, I think, and some of the big names in the world of kind of strength and conditioning have referred to your warm-ups, like Aaron Horskig and at Squat University, guys like that. So I want to talk to you about how you design a warm-up, not just for training, but also for a comp. Like, what are the essential pieces for you? There's just a huge library we can choose from. If everything from, do we use cardio? Do we do minimal cardio? Do we do dynamic stretching? How much passive do we add? Active pieces? Walk me through your workout warm-up design kind of process.
Well, the first thing you have to have is a library of variability. You have to be able to know, I guess the biggest point would be you have to know where your structural weak points are.
Right.
Once that lays the skeleton down for designing the warm-up.
Yeah.
The next is, what are you lifting that day? So what are you priming? So if you're doing a squat, you need to do a squat type movement to kind of dial in the form with a sub-maximal intent or weight, and then get that form immediately perfected with, say, almost 100 reps. It's almost what I call like greasing the joint. You're basically just going in, taking a squat. You're doing it 100 times, 4 sets of 25, and you're getting everything warm, dialed, mobile, and ready.
Yeah.
Actual motor pattern. So that's what I call timer.
Yeah.
The exercises that are selected as major weak points of what you think that movement is. So let's say a bench press, for example. Well, if I know I have a hard time keeping my lats tight and I have a hard time locking weights out or my triceps are deficient, well, that tells you right there that those two muscle groups need to be potentiated into the movement pre-strain. What I find is most people will utilize it and think that they have to keep going heavier and harder. But in reality, what you need to do is be consistent. And I think that's the hardest thing for people to understand, because thrown down our throats that you have to go harder all the time to get better. Yeah. That's only partially true. The people that really get better are the ones that consistently load over extended periods of time. Yeah. So really the time component is more important than the intensity component. So what we utilize is an RPE, or rate of perceived exertion scale. That way it's adjustable depending on stress levels, right? So like, say I had 4 or 5 more hours of work today than I had yesterday. Well, that automatically sets my training up to be diluted. Yeah. I think when people base things on percentages, they automatically set themselves up for failure, because they're probably basing a percentage off of their best. So the winning warmup is derived from RPE scale, allowing 300 reps, 4 sets of 25 per exercise, 1 primer, and 2 major weakness points to dial in. And then what you start to find is, as you train this way, if your general physical preparedness or conditioning allows, it actually enhances technical capacity in the main lift that you're trying to do. Yeah, I love that. I talked about that with John Welber in a bit, because he went away from 1RMs as well. Like, I think, and the variability athlete to athlete is the other thing he talked about. And it's what's interesting, it's just kind of light bulb went off when he said it. Like, is that women's capacity at 80% is usually a lot higher rep range than it would be for men. And little things like that. So going off of RPE or like small or lower rep max testing, I think there's definitely benefit to that. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, RPE scale, I mean, the Russians even utilized it once the guys got to master level of training. And, you know, I think percentages are good in the beginning because they teach you to kind of have structure and they're easier to follow. But once you have a grasp on how your body adapts to training, what things feel like and what is capable of your potential that day, you need to switch over to an RPE scale because it fluctuation and forces the body not to overreach. I think that's the thing that people misunderstand is that hard to overreach when you're a beginner because you don't have any strength to begin with. But when you're insanely strong, the fine line between too much and too little just starts getting narrower. Right. Smart. Once you hit a genetic limit, only the smart guys are the ones that get stronger. Because they learn to work around the roadblocks. That's so true. They hit a roadblock. There's 2 things they either do. They either keep hitting the same roadblock and create an injury, or they stop it backwards. They don't learn around the roadblock. And that really is in the case of education. You know, you can be the strongest guy in the world with the highest level of intensity. But once you start accumulating injuries, your training ability is going to go down no matter what you do. For sure. Absolutely. Well said. And kind of segueing from that, there's different schools of thought and kind of periodization. I know you kind of focus on macro cycle, mesocycle. Talk about how you decide on when an athlete needs to deload or reload, I guess, when we talk about that stuff and periodization. How often, I think you talk about in the book about, you know, doing the same kind of routine is sort of the enemy long-term. How often do you recommend changing up the frequency, rep volume, those kind of variables? Well, the change is for multiple reasons, not just for programming efficiency, if I might say that. It's mostly a determinant of mileage. So what you realize is that if you squat with a straight bar a ton, you're going to start creating shoulder impingement issues. Your back's getting the same pressure at the same rate. All the knees and so true. Same pressure all the time. So eventually what you do is learn how to get strong in a rotating fashion because the body won't allow that level of specific mileage and those points for, say, a 20-year career. So the problem that we have in strength conditioning right now is if you look at everything set up, they're trying to sell people 4 and 6 and 8 week cycles of how to train.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, I think you and I both know, if we've been training long enough, 12 weeks is a minimal amount that you're going to need to train in order to see something change to a positive.
Especially intermediate to advanced, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Broke that initial beginner gain, you're going to have to start the next gains coming. So what I find is that bases everything in 12-week waves.
Mm-hmm.
So if I know that it probably takes at least 12 weeks to see a positive change in something, then I'm going to stick with a similar loading scheme that 12 weeks as far as what the purpose of that is. So maybe it's like off season. So now I'm going to fix left and right imbalances. So for me, a transitional season or an off season training cycle is going to be heavily reliant on stability, coordination, left to right balance to make
stuff.
Bilateral loading
at
least as symmetrical as I possibly can be.
Yeah.
That tremendously from my car accident. So that right there usually has 2 12-week blocks distant apart about 6 months. So I would break my training up into 6-month blocks, and I would do this almost for everybody and anybody listening. If you create a 6-month block, it's not necessarily that you have to do every rep and set that you're right in that 6 months, but it gives you a long-term thinking approach that keeps training too specific too often.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I will do is I would look at my videos of my main lifts and say, do I feel like I need more hypertrophy, more rate of force development, more coordination? Am I missing things because I'm unstable? What factors? Now, once I have those factors, then I look at, okay, what feels good and what feels bad? Does my back feel good right now? Does my knees feel okay? Okay, once you have that plan set, now you go back to your exercise library and you start to devise a plan of attack that has some unforeseen variability in it. Meaning, what I will do is right before I design, say, a 6-month block, I'll go and look at lots of people that I look up to's channel, and I'll see if they're doing exercises that maybe I haven't seen in a while. Because in reality, it's not the exercise, it's what the exercise attacks. So if you know that, say, a front squat, a high bar back squat, a Zercher squat, a low bar narrow stance squat, let's just say those hit very similar muscle groups in a different way. Now I know that I can utilize those 4 or 5 different types of squatting. Now I have different resistance types that I can play with. Bands, free weights, lighten method. Okay, which of these have I used in the past 6 months? Which ones maybe haven't I used? Then I start looking at foot positions, boxes, no boxes, and base all of this stuff around where I think my weakest links are. So it sounds like it's a lot of work, but in reality, when you get good at deciding what your weaknesses are and what you need, I can usually write my 6-month workout plan out in roughly 2 or 3 3-hour blocks. So about 9 hours, I have 6 months laid out pretty damn close to perfect. But I would say that what you need to think of is, and Istvan Bali, I believe he's Canadian, was talking about this a ton, but he used to say, always think you're training in a train to train, train to compete, train to win. So there's 2 seasons out of the year where I will push my maximal weights to the moon. But the other 2 times, the train to train and train to compete phases, I'm building a new foundation to peak those new numbers off of. And so that's the thing, is always build the foundation, then work your way up the pyramid to the specific task at hand. If you think like that, you're going to see it's a 6-month process, number one. Number 2, it's going to force you to not train too specifically for an extended period of time, therefore creating problems.
I love that. And I think, like, even just from a motivation standpoint, it's good to have a little bit of idea of what's going on 6 months down the road instead of just 6 weeks. I think there's a psychological piece there. That's a side benefit. I love that. I want to talk a little bit about the cardio piece. And I think this is, I think there's maybe some evidence that some cardio is going to help strength athletes. Some are like completely won't do it at all. Some will just do sprint versus kind of long aerobic. How do you decide on whether there should be cardio involved in someone that's looking to get stronger, and what kind of volume and sort of pieces would you recommend if they are looking at cardio as part of their program?
Well, the first thing you want to do is, know what your body fat is. I mean, if you're, let's just say 12% body fat, you're an ex-Division I athlete, you are insanely muscular with low body fat, your cardiovascular needs are going to be very different than a person that decides they want to lift weights at 22 and have never touched anything and are sitting at 35% body fat.
Yeah.
So that's my first inclination of, is cardio needed? I mean, I'm kind of one of those hybrid lifters where I truly believe not necessarily cardio, but general physical preparedness is immense in making sustained gains, because I got to a certain point where I was at world record levels and I couldn't show it because I wasn't fit enough, which is why warm-ups were created in the first place.
Oh, wow.
I had a mindset of pre-fatigue, but in reality, now was a mindset of potentiation. Now, fast forward, or thinking it from a different standpoint, the first thing I would look at is body fat percentage. The next thing I would look at is what's the person's resting heart rate. The third thing I would look at is I take them through what I feel in their strength range is a good winning warm-up. And if their heart rate goes above 140, I already know that they're not in good shape.
Yeah.
Second, if we do the winning warm-up and I give them 3 to 5 minutes rest and they can't show me what they can max on a max effort day because, I'm too tired, the warm-up just kicked my ass, automatically know that their physical fitness level is way too low to make progress. So the problem is we come back down to that pyramid scheme of base of your pyramid, which includes a great amount to a great extent, your general physical preparedness or cardio is going to allow you to recover from the hard workouts and allow you to train what I consider the density. So people look at my workouts and go, man, I don't have enough time to do 300 reps for warm-ups, then a main lift, then accessories. What they don't understand is if they come to the gym, all of that's done in 55 minutes.
Right.
Which means you have to be in impeccable shape to do that.
Yeah, true.
So what I find is that most people working out tend to ignore and poorly manipulate the time constraint. So how many times do we hear, oh yeah, I was in the gym last night for 2 hours. What were you doing for 2? You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So the other, you have those hormone, you have androgen depletion after about 55, 60 minutes anyway.
Yeah.
So for people, they're not fit enough to find that anabolic window to make sure that all of their training is doing positive anabolic progress. But back to your major question is, cardio is important, but I think it's more important in anaerobic conditioning.
Yeah.
So read a lot of the old Soviet Eastern Bloc texts. They talk about sustaining anaerobic conditioning, and that sustains strength and cardio.
Yeah.
Meaning swing a 50-pound kettlebell for 2 minutes. That's not that long, but that's hard.
Oh, yeah. So heavy enough for sure. I'm sure lit after that.
I probably bet you could walk for 3 miles and not get winded.
Yeah. So true.
But other way around, right? So I can see guys do a light jog for a mile, give them a 50-pound kettlebell and watch them swing it for 2 minutes. They can't even do it.
Yeah.
So it is a transferability issue with cardiovascular training in of itself.
Yeah.
For the strength athlete, the best thing you can do is a high incline walk because you reduce impact. You're already pushing on the spine and doing a lot of compressive movements.
Right.
So you base your cardio on needs to be traction or limited compression. So that's why I like a high incline treadmill, because you have to step up to the treadmill.
Yeah.
So there is no impact.
Yeah.
But it's extremely hard.
True. Yeah.
I also walking with the treadmill off, dragging sleds with weight vests on, things that are causing me to have to be very tired in between 1 to 2 minutes versus stretching out too long. But, Stan and I have both come to have become to a good agreement that I feel that even strongly trained weightlifters still need anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes of walking a day just to maintain a certain amount of steps.
Right.
And that actually heal from the training. It's more for recovery.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. That's the next thing I wanted to ask you about is recovery. So different schools of thought. And I think within the strength world, within the bodybuilding world, within the CrossFit world, and I'd assume it's a little bit different athlete to athlete, but what is the go-to if you had to pick a piece? Is it mobility? Is it sleep? Is it stretching? Is it active recovery? Where does someone start? They got limited time. How do you start to prioritize what they should be doing in terms of recovery?
Well, I think we all know by now that there is no replacement for quality and quantity of sleep. Sleep is the recovery tool. So what I find if we were to go over to my counter right now, almost all the supplements that I have sitting on my counter are for sleep help, like glycinate, right?
Yeah.
So my point is, I even take some CBD every once in a while. But the point is, anything you can do to enhance sleep quality is going to enhance performance. It's a yin-yang situation. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
So anything you're doing for recovery, in my personal opinion, if you don't have a lot of money or time, focus on sleep. Now, let's say you're in a perfect world and sleep's not an issue and time's not an issue and maybe even money's not an issue. I truly believe that things like a good massage therapist are very, very useful. Yeah. I believe that, especially in the terms of rolfing and deep tissue massage, especially when you get used to it. I'm also a huge fan of hot-cold contrast. I learned that a ton from Verkhoshansky. Used to use that with all the Olympic lifters, and they saw massive spikes in growth hormone output, which is helping the body recover faster anyway.
Right.
So I'm a fan of hot, cold water contrast. I'm a fan of sauna, but only in the wintertime because my gym doesn't have any air conditioning. So when we go in
of heat.
Sauna, it's 105 in there.
Yeah.
What I find is it helps my work capacity tremendously. Yeah. But if you're in cool climate constantly, sauna can be very good as well.
Yeah.
The other big thing is just having a set time that you wake up and go to sleep. They need to get exposed to sunlight immediately when you wake up.
Yeah.
That circadian rhythm helps with hormone production.
Yeah.
Getting an ample amount of sunlight every day is going to help vitamin D and recovery and just making natural hormones.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways that I think that recovery can be a huge tool. I think that people, and especially the supplement companies, tend to overcomplicate it and try to, mask other problems with pre-workouts and stimulants, when in reality, I don't take any of that. I don't need any of it because everything else is in the right alignment.
Yeah, fair enough. So when you're in competition mode, Matt, what is a good night's sleep for you? Is it 8 hours? Is that the kind of magic number, or what did it look like?
Usually, well, when I was competing, you'd be surprised. So I would go to bed around 8:39.
Yeah.
Try to fall at 9:30. I'd get up somewhere around 7, so that's about 9 hours. Then I would get up and train in the morning at that time because I have certain training partners that didn't have real jobs. So what I would do is I'd get up and train, and then I would go eat. Then I would work a couple of hours, literally like a couple of hours, and I'd go back home and sleep again. Yeah. So I would bed from 8:30 to 7, and then back to bed from 2 to 4.
Wow.
And that's what I absolutely needed to recover. It was no ifs, ands, or buts.
That's wild.
So about 11 hours a day of sleep.
That's wild. I would have, I hear the CrossFit Games athletes like hit 9.5, 10. I figured it'd be less than that, but you're moving big weight and you've got that much more muscle mass to recover. I guess it makes sense.
They do extreme shit, but it's longer periods. We do extreme stuff and it's over in a matter of seconds, but the expenditure and the pressure of the things that we do is so much higher.
Yeah.
I think when Dr. Kramer measured me and I was only squatting like in the low 800s at the time when I was in college, they did a blood test on me on a heavy day and my total number was 660.
Wow.
So you talk about making some major pressure on your cells, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So my systolic and diastolic was that high combined. But so I think the damage, we were like top fuel dragsters and CrossFit guys are more like rally racers.
Yeah.
They're still going fast, but they're not doing 0 to 60 in 1.1 seconds. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah. There is some heavy testing, but I think that's obviously not the focus. They're built for more capacity stuff.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. I noticed you got some stuff on the website for nutrition, and this is something that, there's the infinite number of kind of nutrition solutions. When we talk about strength specifically, when athletes is protein the first priority you talk about? Is it total calories, or how do you start walking someone through a better nutrition program to optimize their strength?
Yeah. The big thing is, especially I think for all athletes, but especially strength athletes, is there is no proteins, fats, and carbs all are equally important for various reasons.
Right.
Protein is going to be there to help regenerate muscle tissue.
Yeah.
It's going to be there for satiety if you're trying to maintain weight class.
Yeah.
Fat are hormonally needed to make testosterone and all the other hormones you're going to need to be your best.
Yeah.
So your fat's too low, and carbohydrates is your energy source.
Yeah.
And your body, especially as a power strength athlete, is going to rely heavily on ATP, PCR, and blood glucose. So I'm a huge fan of utilizing all of those. I don't like low carb. I don't like low fat, and I sure don't like low protein.
Right.
But I think for the strength athlete, you have to find that balance. And for me, white rice was always the balance. And I learned that from Stan because I could eat a lot of it.
Yeah.
Never any real body fat on me.
Yeah.
I never got from it, and it absorbed very, very well. So you have to pick your carbs wisely.
Yeah.
Then the other end of that spectrum, the fats, all the fat soluble vitamins you just have to have, are primarily responsible for making testosterone. So getting good fats in is huge. But that also means avoiding poor fats like trans fats and things that would make your digestive system not only be irritated, but also cause other health parameter issues down the road. So I don't think that any one of them is more important than the other. We're designed to eat all of it. But the problem is understanding the portion amount that you need at what level. So like the last time I did a lean body mass test, I was 237.7 pounds of lean mass.
Wow.
The amount of calories I have to eat is just to sustain that's almost 4,300.
Yeah, that's wild.
So, but the average person is going to be around 150, 160 if they're pretty lucky. And so that means that they would almost nearly have 100 pounds less of lean mass.
Yeah.
So I try to find is that when you're trying to figure out your calories, figure them out from your lean body mass number, not your body number, because you don't want the bad amount of cells. And I think that's where strength athletes get messed up is they think, well, I'm bulking so I can eat these poor calories. In reality, you're just causing hormonal wreckage. You're not digesting anything, and it's really not on any quality muscle. And that would be, I would love if I could revert back time into my 20s and understand that, because I felt that I felt stronger when I had more poor calories, and that let me do that in my 20s. But by the time I was in my mid 30s, not only was it affecting my blood work, but it was also not making me any stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. You start spinning your wheels.
Here, I would have not only carried more muscle tissue, but I also would have sustained higher health parameters with even higher performance.
Yeah. I love that. So that's cool. I was actually going to ask you if you can go back in your training history, if there's one thing you could change. Would it be that you'd try higher quality foods, more nutrient dense stuff in the 20s?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I was just starting to learn that in school, and I didn't know the impact it was going to have until I was at the later end of my career. And I went from 315 down to 292, and I was stronger because I had pulled inflammation off.
Right.
So I think that was a good wake-up call. You cannot put strength in front of health, or at the end of the day, you'll have neither.
Yeah, true. That's well said. I love that. So similar question, talking about coaching. I mean, I don't personally, my coaching has evolved. Well, it's still evolving, but what are the main differences in how you coach an athlete from the early days into today, man?
Well, it's just having a higher degree of awareness of the whole day versus just the training session.
Yeah.
I think you put so much importance on the session, but you're not putting importance on the other 23 hours. And so I find that as I've gotten older and smarter, I find that sometimes, or most times, the Swiss cheese hole and what's going on that's wrong is not in the gym. It's actually located in the lifestyle outside of the gym, the sleep parameters, eating parameters,
stress management.
All of those factors play a humongous role in the type of workout that you're going to be able to make, sustain, and grow from. So I always look at it like a glass of water. If you have a big glass of water, but your stress and your energy level has been poured in half, you can only train to half that glass. You can't train like you have a full glass. And that's where I think a lot of people mess up is they don't think that they're going to have to make different job decisions to train hard. You will. They don't think that you're going to have to go to bed early so they can squat good tomorrow. Eventually you will.
Yeah.
You have to be in situations where you're low stress. Like, if you have a girlfriend that's just constantly nagging you and wants to go out and party at night and doesn't come home till 3 a.m, all that stuff affects your training the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's all about putting yourself in the proper environment to succeed. And I find that although we do see some problems with people's training style or programming, a lot of times it's those other things that are the issue.
Right. I love that. One of the things I want to segue into, and you have a guide on anti-aging or training for 40 plus, and I want to ask you about that because I feel like we're still kind of figuring this out. What is the ideal program kind of as a function of age? And I think it depends on your training age and all those pieces. When you start to build a program for someone that is getting into that age bracket, what are the major differences if you compare that to like the competitor in the 20s versus someone that's just kind of trying to get strong in their 40s?
Well, the first thing you look at is what was the previous mileage. So sometimes you're better off if a person doesn't have a lot of background, because then they're not going to have an ACL repair. They're not going to have back problems.
Less wear and tear. Yeah.
To be so sedentary, they have other problems. So I think a lot of training somebody in their 40s and above, really anybody, but especially that particular age group, you have to be even more aware of postural deficiencies. So, lordosis, kyphosis, you have to be more aware of the right imbalances, because the problem is the aging process, whether we want to or not, has already started. So now what you do when you're developing your program is try your best to not accelerate that aging process, actually take it the opposite direction. And sometimes that's not done with intensity, that's done with volume. So find is that the older you get and the bigger base that you build, you can start sustaining a little bit more volume, but a little bit less intensity.
Right.
Whether that's neurological degradation, just muscle energy, that you just don't have as much anymore. I mean, let's look at the average. I mean, I get there's a lot of different factors, but I mean, if a guy plays past 35 in the NFL, he's a freak.
Yeah.
So now you're looking at 40. And the problem is that you have to have a traction-based mindset with this particular group, meaning belt squats most of the time instead of free squats, doing reverse hypers and 45-degree back extensions more often than deadlifts. I'm not saying that you don't use those movements. You just have to be a little bit more sparing with them and try to figure out a way to hit those muscle groups without more compression.
Right.
Because in the reality, most people listening to this are not going to go and say, well, I'm not going to train you unless you get a full back MRI and I see every disc and I see you're not going to do that. But maybe you should, because you don't know if L2 and L3 are smashed, and now you're going to cause a humongous, ripple effect of problems because you didn't have a good look at their skeletal system. So what I find is that the first 6 or 8 months that I train people, I put them in what I consider stupid proof movements that are not going to create mileage. So a huge fan of, in that particular age group, back extensions, 45-degree back extensions, glute ham raise extensions, or glute ham raises if they're strong or light enough. Belt squats, reverse hypers, sled dragging. So you're seeing my point. Everything that we're using is more traction based. And then the big thing that we do with all athletes, but especially people over 40 years old, is we always calculate the volume of front to back ratio. So I make sure that if we do something that could be quad dominant, they're doing twice as much hamstring work. If they're doing, say, 2,000 pounds of pressing work, they're going to do 4,000 pounds of back work. And that's at minimum. So those calculations always have to play into your mind when training that particular group of people, because you don't want to accelerate gravitational postural problems. And you find that the average 40-year-old that goes and picks up a Muscle and Fiction, magazine, they're going to the mirror, and they're not going to have any conception that they're advancing their postural deficiencies.
Muscle and Fiction, I love that.
I mean, it's but
so I just kind of to spin off of that a little bit, you mentioned the deadlift, and obviously we do need to kind of manage volume, I think, as we get older. And would you like, maybe to a lesser extent, program a little bit more of sumo lifts as opposed to conventional deadlifts for someone that's had a back history, or is it more of the assistance movements?
Without a doubt. I mean, that's another big key is, sumo deadlift, people, especially in the performance runs, well, that's cheating because of range of motion. But let me tell you, most people don't have that level of flexibility, and that's why they have problems. So if we look, is the number one cause of lower back issues. So we know 85% of the population is going to suffer a debilitating back issue at some point in their life. The number one cause of back problems is hip mobility. So if the sumo deadlift enhances hip mobility when done correctly, as long as you don't have ape-length arms and you're not perfectly built to deadlift, the sumo deadlift for most people is much harder position to get into. Especially in any sort of a deficit. So I find that once the person's prepared, sumo deadlifts is key. The other key is double overhand. You want to get the central nervous system in the hands to be the limiting factor for the first year to 2 years of training. So if I'm doing a mixed grip deadlift with an advanced aged person, I'm already causing all kinds of imbalances just because of the grip, number one. Number two, I'm negating when their brain is telling them to shut off, which is directly connected to your hands. So I'm a huge component of getting the hands strong before the rest of the body, because you create almost a governor in the average person that hasn't had a lot of weight training by making sure that grip is always the issue.
That's super smart, especially if you look at the correlations that we're seeing now with grip strength and cardiovascular fitness and even falls and mortality. It's crazy. It's like, I think grip strength is a higher teller for death than cardiovascular fitness and end of life. It's wild. So
glad that somebody in the medical field finally pulled their head out of the ass and started doing some research. Because that won't happen immediately, but that's gonna turn everything on its back in the medical field.
100%.
That study was valid and keeps reproducing the same result, because Cooper and all these other people back 60 years ago completely bastardized strength training and told everybody it wasn't going to make you healthier and told everybody it was going to make you better. And that the medical field flocked onto it like a dozen rats on a spoiled sandwich. So we need to have strength to be in the medical field, and this is one giant leap for that.
Absolutely, 100% agree. This has been awesome, Matt. What's on tap for Wenning Strength for the rest of the year? Do you have new products come out? Is there any more PDFs we can look forward to? What do you guys got going on?
So I have the new power building hypertrophy phase 2 that I just finished. That's when I did the Tom Platz squat. So for those of you guys that didn't see, I did 520 pounds on squat for 24 reps. So talk about and cardio. So imagine holding 520 pounds for 2 minutes. That's cardio.
That is wild. But
long story short, we have the new power building phase 2 manual is going to come out.
Cool.
I have a retirement manual, which is going to be for 65 plus, which I'm actually designing off my mom because she's living with me right now. So I take her to the gym every time I go, and then we're making a program. I'm seeing what she can handle because she's 66 and never lifted weights.
Wow.
So to see what she can do in a matter of time, she's down 9 pounds, and she's already benching 65 pounds for like sets of 8.
That's
and
unreal.
She just did 100 pounds for 5 sets of 5.
That's crazy. Wow.
Never before. So in 4 weeks, it's pretty interesting watching her change, but we're developing completely off of that, which is 100% for 65 plus retirement.
I love that.
I have not yet signed the contract, but did a handshake agreement that I will write a conjugate book for human kinetics.
Oh, amazing.
So it's going to be college level. So it's going to be a hell of an undertaking. I'm not so sure that the monetary value is there, but to be a published author is kind of one of those check marks off of the old resume, you know?
For sure. That's unreal. Very cool.
So that's what we got going on. Obviously, the Train Heroic and Patreon are growing like crazy. It's just 8 workouts for a very affordable price. So if you have the time or energy to learn how to rotate stuff, we do it in a very educated fashion on Train Heroic with videos on how to do the exercises for $30 a month. I mean,
that's tough to beat.
And then on the other side, Patreon allows people to have Q&A directly to me and see the workouts that I'm doing, plus all the YouTube videos with extended cuts and special projects. Like, we're doing, we take the YouTube videos and go above and beyond another 5-10 minutes into the video. And then we do also stuff like special discounts, and I'll go deep into programming or squat technique or all these different areas. And those videos are for Patreon only.
Cool. Amazing. Love that. We'll be on the lookout for that. Matt, talk me through a little bit of your personal health and wellness priorities. Obviously, strength is near the top of the list. What are the other priorities around your health that you tend to focus on prioritizing? What do your habits look like around that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think health is really a combination of your sleep habits, your training habits, and your eating habits. Mm-hmm. So I try to keep my eating habits as clean as I possibly can because I'd like to stay bigger and stronger. I'll be 43 this year. And I'd like to stay looking the exact same in 10 years.
Yeah.
But with that being said, the program has always been about longevity and just lasting longer. So every 6 months to a year, depending on what my doc says, I go in and get blood work drawn, tells me things I need to change, add or subtract, which the diet's pretty clean now. So that's not a huge issue. The sleep has always been a huge priority. So I try to always lay down. As you can see, there's no lights on at my house. So when the sun's down, I'm down.
Yeah.
So I just try to maintain all of that. Just trying to keep everything as healthy as I possibly can without putting any excessive mileage on anything per se. And that's been a huge help by rotating the exercises that I do.
Yeah.
Because it'll strain and keep pushing even into my older years. But I've noticed that I don't have the mileage that other people have. And that's a true testament to the rotation of exercises. And I hope that one day, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen in my generation, but I hope that one day people start to wise up and start realizing that specificity in many ways is the major killer of your goals because it allows you to only think so narrow-minded in how to get where you want to be.
Yeah.
Creating that general base, that big pyramid that we talked about earlier, is huge in order to sustain things. Because usually, I always say this all the time, but the one that gets the strongest is the one that can do it the longest.
Yeah.
If the training program only allows you to train like that for 3 years, you're not going to beat somebody that can do it for 15.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well said. I think that's the telltale sign of someone that's been doing this for a while. I think the kind of junior coaches find a program that works and like, oh, this is what everybody's got to do. And it's, you forget about the mileage. Maybe that's not on your radar, but I love it. Absolutely love that.
It's a mixture of lack of education. It's a mixture of most coaches have never been to that level. So they don't know what they're going through. And then I would say on top of all of that, and most of it is laziness. I mean, how hard was it for me at 19, 20 and up to 26 to pick up books and actually just read?
Yeah.
It's like everybody wants everything handed to them, but go dig through the books and, people get upset sometimes because I make people join Patreon for questions and things like that. I'm like, you're not paying me on Patreon for questions. You're paying me for the 30 years of experimentation that I had to do to answer your question.
Yeah, seriously.
So if people get upset with me about it, I automatically know what their position is on stuff, and I don't want them around me anyway.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, you honestly can't replace that experience. Well, Matt, this has been an unreal chat. What's the best way for people to follow your content?
Yeah, well, go on winningstrength.com. So WENNING. Obviously, we post a ton of stuff on YouTube. That's Winning Strength YouTube channel. We have 350 videos on there. And I'm sure that no matter what questions somebody has, if they were take the time and look through those videos, they're going to find the answer.
Got to be in there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I post all the exercises within reason of what I do on Instagram. So that's Real Matt Wenning. So we probably 4 or 5 times a day on that particular channel. So the website, YouTube, and Instagram are pretty much our biggest satellites to get out to people.
Amazing. Well, we'll link to that in the show notes. Matt, thanks so much for the time. It's been a great chat, man.
All right, man. No problem.
Cheers. All right. Thanks for tuning in this episode of Healthspan Academy, guys. And we'll see you next time. Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in today. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. This has been a fun project. We're growing in viewership every single week, and we obviously couldn't do that without you. So thank you for continuing to tune in. I really hope you're getting value out of the programming and the content. Just wanted to give you a heads up. I've been working on a book on health and longevity the last couple of years, been collaborating with my colleague, Dr. Dan Vitale, who's an expert in the field as well. And we've basically just kind of summarized the literature, some of the techniques that we found really useful in the world of biohacking, what our exercise regimen looks like, what's, cardio type stuff is going to help us live longer and healthier, mobility work, nutrition. We've covered the whole spectrum, everything that you can basically be in control of in your health and fitness kind of moving forward to help you live as healthily as possible for as long as possible. And it's available free for download. So if you click on the YouTube banner, you'll see a link to download the blueprint. It's also on our Instagram profile or on the website. You can click on 5pillarmethod.com/optimize to get your free copy of the book. And I hope you enjoy it. Hope you're keeping well. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.